Hold on one second. Man, I don't host a space for 2 seconds.
But I'm good. Nice to hear you guys.
Yeah, good to see you too. Welcome to Tesla Live. Omar is here as well. Dallas is going to run the interview with Chuck. But before we do, please head over to the top of our screens and smash that like button on YouTube. Our goal in Tesla Live to get to 100 likes before we start and 1,000 by the end of it. And we have a great person today, Chuck. Good to have you here. Omar is here as well. Jimmy, Dallas, JC, Uzi, welcome everybody. I hope you all had a great weekend. Um, Chuck, let's start with you. Dallas asked you to join here after watching your video. Dallas, would you like to maybe give us an overview first of what you saw in the interview?
Yeah, I actually just wrapped up watching that video. Fantastic stuff there. I think that's something that a lot of people don't focus on because we're told Summon just goes to all the cars and it's going to be the same for every vehicle. And I think your video highlighted that it does show a little bit of advancements or even just confidence, I guess is the word, on AI4. Chuck, is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, and since I see him in the audience, AJ's here too. Shout out to him. He's the one that keeps pushing me sometimes to do these hardware 3 and hardware 4 comparisons. Um, that, rendering, all of these cameras. Sometimes I just think about how much work it is to do, and I'm just like, there's just no way I really want to do all this. But AJ, shout out to you. You keep pushing me along, and usually at the end, after I get it put together, it was well worth it. And Dallas, to your point, people seem to appreciate it. It's definitely not a moneymaker. Don't make any sense that's what this is about, because it definitely takes more time than it's probably worth. But it does show some very important things, and I think that's important for FSD owners and Tesla owners, or even shareholders, or anyone trying to understand where Tesla is on their FSD journey. And there's so much, I don't want to say concern, maybe concern is the right word, concern over the future path of hardware 3, hardware 4, and even on the earnings call with Elon kind of, committing to do upgrades if required on hardware 3 if they can't get there. I think that is an important statement for hardware 3 owners to hear. But I'll also say there were owners prior to hardware 3 that were promised that same thing too, and are probably left out in the cold a little bit with this latest one. But I think we're going to continue working down this path for long enough that there might not even be a whole lot of hardware 3 cars, that haven't been upgraded. We'll see. But the purpose of this was to talk about actually Smart Summon and to kind of do a side by side, because actually Smart Summon on version that the AI4 Model Y has, 12.5.6.1, is really pretty good. But I've also been DM'd and sent some pictures of Summon, cutting a corner too quickly, coming out of a spot and getting a door scratched and dinged, or hitting a pole that it didn't see coming out of a parking carport. So it's by no means flawless, and I think everyone just needs to remember, this is your vehicle. Be careful when you're doing it, and the best thing you can do is to keep your eyes on it in some way. And in this drive, we were keeping our eyes on it with an additional tool of an overhead drone. Admittedly, my auto tracking and the drone skills were not perfect on this one. I probably should have had a little bit more of an angled perspective behind the vehicle than straight on top, so you could see a little bit more of what was going on in front of the car. We found a few little GPS anomalies that were kind of searching for ideas, that we kind of had the car come meet us underneath a covered kind of a portico where you might load your groceries in the rain. And AJ's hardware 3 car twice did not come under the portico. It stayed outside, and my car twice went under the portico. And that was probably the most significant difference we were able to discern between the two vehicles. Maybe it was a GPS thing. Maybe it was even a cellular carrier thing. I think AJ is on T-Mobile and I was on Verizon on the phones we were using at the time. Anyway, so that was a little bit of an intro. Maybe we can answer some more questions or talk about it. But we definitely think we saw a few slowness performance differences. The car is definitely cutting corners a little bit. But it's very cautious around pedestrians. I don't see any pedestrian issues. I do think there are some other vehicle interactions that are a little bit unnatural, and perhaps confuses people that don't realize there's a human there. And you can kind of imagine people yelling at the car, without a driver in it, kind of a thing, with normal impatience sort of stuff, but not
Yeah.
dangerous.
Thank you very much, Chuck. It's great to have you here. I'm looking forward to this hour of conversation with you. And AJ is on the board as well now. We're going to go to AJ in a second, but I got to say a word to our sponsors who make Tesla Live possible. And especially Paymore today. Paymore is upgrading me to a MacBook Pro so that I don't have to put ice anymore on my laptop to keep the laptop cool so that we don't have any issues. So Paymore is a great sponsor of the space. Let me say a quick thank you. Tesla Live is proudly sponsored by Paymore, your trusted destination for buying, selling, trading, and recycling electronics. At Paymore, you can buy the latest gadgets at great prices, sell or trade your used electronics for cash or store credit, and recycle your old broken devices responsibly, helping reduce electronic waste. And Tesla Live is proudly sponsored by Joa, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. At Joa, you'll find innovative charging solutions, stylish interior upgrades, protective gear, and cutting-edge tech add-ons. Use promo code TSLA Live at checkout to receive a special discount on your next purchase. Thank you, Paymore and Joa, for sponsoring Tesla Live and Tesla community. All right, let's go to AJ. And in the meantime, if anybody has questions for Chuck, AJ, Omar, Dallas, we have a number of people who have used and tested intentionally Smart Summon, actually Smart Summon. So this is the time to do it. And let's go to AJ. AJ, how are you?
Oh, Yaman. How's everything?
Good. What'd you think about what Chuck said earlier?
It definitely what Chuck said is everything that I concur with that. And if I was to just add anything to it, it's just the additional nuance of fact. It was very telling that the Hardware 3, my car, was very very much tellingly more cautious in addressing some situations where, let's say, if it saw a vehicle coming in, encroaching it as it approached the T junction to make a left, and also when there were pedestrians around it. It just generally seemed much more cautious. And we started our testing first, and it seemed like it was a placebo that maybe my car was slower, a little bit less confident and fluid, and as Chuck's. But then it became very clear after that that yep, there is a distinct difference. And we were always like having to kind of keep up with the Chuck's Model Y because it just kept going to the destination without any hesitation and a lot of confidence. And Hardware 3, which is my car, did kept on having to exhibit some jerkiness, slight that I could only interpret as it being proceeding a little bit cautiously, more cautiously than Hardware 4.
Very good. Thank you, AJ. Omar, go ahead.
But I was reading the description of the video when I was watching it, and wasn't Chuck's car also running a later version of the software?
Yeah, it was two different versions. I'm 12.5.6.1, and AJ, I believe, correct me, you were 12.5.4.1. So it's definitely not the same software version. That's another issue there. Not issue, but difference.
Yeah, so obviously 12.5.6.1 is not available for Hardware 3 yet. So there would have been no way to compare Hardware 3 and 4 with the exact same version. But assuming that they do eventually get Hardware 3, 12.5.6.1 working, then the performance might be also less hesitant.
Yep, that's absolutely a fair statement. 12.5.4.1 is getting a little long in the tooth, and there are kind of a lot of folks, hoping to get up to whatever the 12.5.6. Maybe it'll be 12.5.6.1 or maybe a 12.5.6.3. We're not sure yet, but that will be a better test for sure in the same exact at least branch, than the one we did.
Great. Thank you, Dallas.
Yeah, I guess this is a question for Chuck or Omar or AJ for that matter. We've seen one update since AS was released that noted changes to Summon, like improvements on camera boards and stuff like that. Are they going to be constantly improving Summon with or without release notes? Like, is it essentially as FSD improves, you'll just naturally see improvements to Summon because it's built on that platform?
I do think we're going to continue to get them. At the We Robot event, I was able to talk to the engineer that was in charge of actually Smart Summon, and he was very excited about a lot of upcoming improvements. I do think that initial point release was mostly around that emergency stopping that we saw initially. That was kind of noticed close to curbs. So the release notes have kind of ebbed and flowed. It's probably a resource constraint inside the team. They probably had someone that was writing them. That person may have left, or they just said this is too much work, or maybe the release notes even got them a little bit of in hot water on having to commit to keep doing them or something. I'm not sure. I miss them, but I'm sure there's a reason we're not getting the detailed ones anymore.
Thank you. Let's go to Reggie and then Uzi.
Hey, I use actual smart swimming every day, so I can stay on here and answer questions. But I do have a question. Will Tesla actually introduce high definition maps for parking lots? So it seems like that would help out a lot when it comes to actual smart swimming.
Unlikely. Omar, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many parking lots in the world. It'd be hard to probably map every parking lot. And, parking lots are something that changes much more often than streets. You can just kind of build a parking lot or remodel a parking lot or construct something much more often than the roads change.
Thank you. Uzi.
Yeah, I have a kind of silly question, but I was wondering if you gave Smart Summon an impossible route, how does it communicate with you? Like, is it determining that the route is impossible, or it's kind of a hypothetical, but I'm curious to know how it communicates in those cases.
Okay. Chuck.
I just want to go back to that last one with the high definition maps. Like you said, doubtful they're going to do it that way. But if you try to make a parallel from what they're showing us on the Optimus and how it's mapping its world after it walks through it, that is probably a more likely outcome of creating some sort of 3D vector space with Teslas driving through it that could perhaps be saved on some sort of layer. I'm not sure how to answer the question that was just asked because you can't give someone a route. You have to just watch the route it finds, and you use your phone to kind of see the path it's going, if that makes sense.
Dallas.
Yeah, kind of a piggyback question off of that, Chuck. I noticed recently for the first time the route that it decided. Initially, I was within the radius, and then the vehicle decided to go to the back of the parking lot to follow the flow of traffic properly. But by deciding to do that, it then left me out of the radius, and then it abandoned the vehicle, at the end of the parking lot. Is that something you see improving over time, where it will then know to get to you, I'm going to have to leave the initial assigned radius?
I think the radius is
Yeah.
just going to get bigger. That won't matter.
Yeah. Dallas, you're definitely speaking into your iPhone 16 today, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Yeah, that sound quality is unbelievable. Thank you very much for upgrading. Okay. Yeah, I see we have a couple of new speakers. It's very important that people raise their hands before they speak so that I can say their name, which allows ChatGPT to know who's speaking. And ChatGPT then summarizes the space for my patrons. And then also I can send specific daily feedback to our speakers. And it's very important that we kind of stick to that. Raise your hand so that I can call on you. Glenn Cook.
Hey, Chuck, I know you're down here with me in Florida. Can you see the difference between your Cybertruck FSD and your Model Y FSD? I know it's two different levels, but especially on the summons, can you see if there's a distinct difference?
Yeah, I mean, can I go ahead and answer that? Is that how you want me to do it? Okay.
Yeah, Chuck,
all
go
right.
ahead.
I'm just trying to follow the rules. Okay. Yes, there's a definite difference in 12.5.5.2 and 12.5.6.1. Omar's probably could say the same thing even out west in California. First of all, the biggest difference is 12.5.5.2 on the Cybertruck does not have the speed profiles that the new Model Y AI4 does. The speed profiles are a large improvement on end-to-end on highway. The Cybertruck also has some different and more harsh braking curves. As a driver, it feels like, oh, it's going to slow down. Oh, it's not slowing down. And then it starts slowing down and it kind of almost, I don't want to say emergency stops, but aggressively stops there at the end. So you could definitely tell they're not the exact same, or at least the way the vehicle is behaving to the model is not the same as the Model Y, to more accurately say it.
Thank you very much. David Herman.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, David, what's your question for Chuck?
Maybe you guys have spoken about this. I'm not sure, and I just kind of logged on, and I just was given the release to full self-driving just recently, and it's another trial version. And all I can say is I'm just totally blown away by how it is now, and makes me feel like it's really tempting to just subscribe to this. This is just so remarkable, and doesn't seem like enough people are talking about it with the politics and everything going on. So I'm just kind of talking about that. But one of the couple of the questions I have is, can we discuss on, when I start off on my full self-driving, I can actually put it in right from my driveway and go to a restaurant or whatever. And it's so good right now that I feel like I could just sleep in the car because it's just that good. But
yeah, we can ask Chuck if he believes. Thank you very much, David, for the question. Chuck, do you think you can sleep in the car today?
No. While there are times it can lull you into that, specifically in the middle part of the drives, there are just enough occasional scary interactions that could be dangerous for you in your vehicle. So not yet.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Machine,
always
welcome.
make
How are
sure
you?
to pay close attention. Definitely.
Yeah. By the way, I did a test drive. We're going to talk about this later on in the second half. I always bring my friends to test drives and test FSD and different models at the same time. And this was a no nag FSD. So we're going to talk about it in the second half. In the meantime, we just reached 100 likes on YouTube. Thank you very much, everybody who take action to support Tesla Live through the link at the top of your screens. We reach 100. Our goal is to get to 1,000 likes. All right. Machine, welcome. How are you?
Well, I'm enjoying the comedy here of people thinking that they're going to live if they just close their eyes and let this thing drive them.
The thing
Yeah.
is, they will live. That's the part that is confusing to people. They will, but maybe 1 out of 1,000 times or something like that, they wouldn't. So you have to watch. But that number is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Machine, it sounds like you would live for a few days before.
God, like, just run for governor, Omar. Just get it over with. You're such a politician. It's insane. Your immediate ability to pivot things in
No, I mean,
Okay.
it's just a
five
fact.
seconds.
You know,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
said
it
you
is.
could survive one drive
for a
probably.
few
It's not
days.
smart.
All right, I'm losing
Unbelievable.
control. Losing control. ChatGPT is deducting points from my moderation ability. Okay, therefore, I'm going to step in. ChatGPT, please forgive me. Machine, you are warned. This is your first warning. What's your question to Chuck Cook?
My question for Chuck is, if you were a fighter pilot going through a mountainous terrain where you need near instant reaction, and you had to choose between the robust, high perception, high compute of hardware 4 and the laggy, unreliable hardware 3, which would you choose?
Well, that obviously is a baited question, but I understand the point, and anyone putting their life or the lives of others in harm's way would want the best equipment available, which is why I like to bring up sensor suites. And I like to talk about things. A vision only system in my mind is a solvable problem, but it's not as superhuman as perhaps other sensors could make it, especially with fog, mist, smoke, other sort of things. Sandy Monroe likes to talk about infrared as another sensor capability. So obviously, the more the better if the problem can be solved, but that isn't necessarily the best case for a scalable large fleet that Tesla is trying to achieve here. So, a fighter pilot and a jet and a fleet of millions of vehicles is not an exact comparison. You might even make that argument better to a small fleet like Waymo to a fighter jet because there's small numbers there.
Thank you, Chuck. Let's go to Jimmy.
Chuck, what is the actual hardware difference between 3 and 4 for actual Smart Summon?
Hardware difference is the computer cameras are 5 megapixels. There's more RAM on the PCB, things like that. Is that your question? It's basically the computer has a much more robust chip, more RAM, and higher definition cameras.
Thank you, Chuck, and thanks, Jimmy, for the question. Dallas.
Yeah, Chuck, while we're on the topic of hardware 3, do you feel that hardware 3 has reached the end of its runway, or do you think that there's more time down the road for them to keep improving on hardware 3?
No, hardware 3 cars are going to be an amazing system. We don't know where the end of the road is yet. 12.5.4.1 or even 12.5.6 is not going to be the end of hardware 3. This problem is going to continue to evolve. I do think there are going to be latencies or RAM issues or compute inference capabilities that are just not going to be the same. I think the biggest difference to me that nobody talks about is a 1.2 megapixel camera is nowhere near the resolution of a 5 megapixel camera, which equals range when you're using vision as your range measuring techniques. And that, the eyes, they said something like 50 megapixels. So there's just a long way to go here. So hardware 3 will continue to be a great car. I don't think it will be a robotaxi. That's a personal opinion, but there are many, many people that disagree with me.
Wow. Well, Machine agrees with you, that's for sure. He's been saying here for years that he doesn't think hardware 3 is going to make it to robotaxi. Machine, have you is that accurate? Looks like Machine checked out. All right. If you have any questions for YouTube, for Chuck Cook on YouTube, feel free to drop in live chat and I'll read it out to you, Chuck, here. Machine?
Absolutely. You know my stance. I've said the same thing for a few years for a variety of reasons, and Chuck clearly elucidated another reason. It's not just compute, it's the camera resolution, where for most situations, of course, I do believe the hardware 3 cameras are sufficient. But we're talking about very rare edge cases that these conditions may change and you may need to see further, or there may be some occlusion or some weird sun artifact that causes issues with resolving the speed kinematics of an object with high confidence, and having higher camera resolution may overcome that. And those sort of cases are the ones where accidents may occur, and simply the rate of accidents may be too high. We don't know, but those are things that may happen.
Thank you. Is someone vacuuming in your house or is there some construction going on?
There is gardeners outside with their obnoxious gas combustible engine leaf blower.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not like trimming your leg hair or something. Okay. Dallas.
Yeah, Chuck, last question for you that I've kind of had prepared here. Do you feel that the current sensor suite being, I guess, current being AI4, do you feel that that will be the hardware suite that Tesla achieves unsupervised, full self-driving, regulatorily approved in the US? And if you don't, when do you think that will occur?
I've been saying the same thing for 3, 4 years now. I'm not going to change my opinion that I don't think that hardware 3 or hardware 4 is going to allow the removal of a driver unless Tesla chooses to constrain the operational design domain. I've given that exact same answer for years now. And when I say constrain the operational design domain, the world is the big place. I just don't think we can say it can go anywhere with this hardware because it is not a superhuman hardware suite with its relative mitigations to high-speed cross traffic. High-speed cross traffic is an example of an unprotected left-hand turn where the cars are approaching it faster than 50 miles an hour. A 5 megapixel camera only has a couple of pixels at the stated ranges of the cameras in order to perceive distance without the benefit of any parallax. Those are just risky things to remove the driver. It is going to be an amazing ADAS system, and I can't wait for it to continue to get better and better and better. To put somebody in the back seat in an unconstrained domain, I think it's going to require some additional something. Now, they didn't put any additional something in what we saw on the Cybercab. So Tesla obviously feels I'm wrong on this, and I'm going to enjoy watching the journey because I'm right in the middle of it with all of you. So I'm not going to give you a time. They've obviously stated next year. They think they're going to get there safer than a human. I believe they said second quarter next year. I do believe in the center of the drives. Once we're on the roads where Tesla performs very well with its system, we will be safer than a human next year. I just don't know if we're going to get approval to remove a driver in an unconstrained domain. Waymo is a constrained domain, just to use an example of that.
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you to Sterling Tucker for becoming a new member of the YouTube channel, and Jeffrey Jones for a super chat and asks, is Machine named after the villain in the Nicolas Cage movie 8mm? With that, let's go to Glenn Cook. Glenn?
Yeah, question is for Omar. Omar, Elon stated that states, Texas and California, will be the first unsupervised. What do you think it would take legislatively to make third the state of Florida?
I think he did say that after those first two states, they're going to continue trying to expand to more states. So, of course, we have to see what the software is in 2025. But yeah, if it works well in California and Texas, there's no technical factor preventing them from scaling to other states.
Omar, what do you make of the fact that Waymo hasn't yet expanded in Florida? Even though they have San Francisco, Phoenix, they have LA on the docket, and Austin, and a couple other, I think Dallas, maybe Houston, but I've never heard anything about the Florida city.
Well, Waymo just raised $5.6 billion, its largest funding round yet. I bet we're going to see them announce some new cities as a result of that funding.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Wes, any questions or comments from your end? Okay, Dallas?
Chuck, if you were in charge of the Tesla AI team and you were given full reign to improve the current software suite, which sensor would you add into AI4 or be it AI5 to improve the reliability of the system overall?
Cameras looking sideways to provide parallax for high-speed cross traffic that are forward of the steering wheel. So anywhere from the side view mirror forward that the engineering team thought would work. It could even go in the repeater location with a second camera. That high-speed cross traffic just needs a little bit more visibility when obscured, and also parallax to perceive speed a little bit better. And that would be the first one. I could probably go into others, but that's to give a short answer.
Thank you, Chuck. Wes?
So just to be clear, what is the exact reason that you think hardware 3 or even hardware 2 for that matter wouldn't be applicable to Robotaxi? Because I'm still confused.
Chuck?
Well, mostly the compute, the inference speed, the camera resolution, and the amount of RAM, which equates to essentially its ability to have a little bit of memory, its context window. It's a little older technology from where their models are right now.
Okay, so you can't point to something very specific, no calculation.
No, I guess I can't answer that question. It's a gut feel based on from 4 years of experience driving it.
Yeah, just as a reminder, thank you, Chuck. What I really find interesting is that we're having the same conversation for years now. And Wes has had this conversation about, I think, a decade ago when working at Tesla as a product manager, right, Wes? And you kind of had played a role or led the discussions around what sensor suite to be put on Teslas. Yeah, would you like to get, for the audience, can you remind us your role that pertains to this discussion?
Yeah, so I was the first, we called it program manager at Tesla for Autopilot. And then we designed the hardware 1 system and the hardware 2 system. And then also had a hand in designing the architecture for what is now Etherloop, which is a cool name, but we didn't have a name for it back then.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We have a great group of speakers today to dig into these topics as long as the time allows, and to support Tesla Live so that we can have more of these conversations. Please go up to the top of your screens. If you're listening in X, click through to the YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe so we can have more insightful speakers like this, insightful discussions like this. Machine, go ahead, and then we're going to go to Yoda.
I would just add, I think the new information on this topic that's come up in the last few months is, one, clearly there's starting to be some delineation between hardware 3 and 4, which hadn't happened before. And two, which I would say is even more important, is that there have been snippets of information from the CEO starting to leak out about maybe some limitations with hardware 3. The most specific, obviously, in the earnings call, where he basically said, now we're not sure, and we'll refund you or whatever, give you hardware 4, maybe. So he's starting now to hint to these things being the case.
Very good, insightful comments. Omar, would you like to respond to that?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think everybody's kind of just a little off base here. I mean, Waymo is doing a new car. They've adjusted their sensor suite a little bit. You can adjust your sensor suite at any time. So, even if they have to do a hardware 5, hardware 6, if they can achieve autonomy with any hardware, then that's a step forward. In terms of getting it to hardware 4 or hardware 3, you can either get the model to run on those cars or you can upgrade the hardware. I think the performance difference between hardware 3 and hardware 4 honestly continues to be very small. Hardware 3 isn't running the latest update yet, but for the updates we've seen, they perform pretty much the same. I drive them both. They do pretty much the same thing. And we've now taken unsupervised rides in hardware 4 Teslas. At the event, we have actually smart summon, where people can have the car operate around driverlessly in parking lots. We use FSD, here in Los Angeles, and it does very complex stuff, including high-speed unprotected left turns without any issue routinely. Is it 100% perfect? Of course not. There's still some times that you have to take over, but I think it's really sort of a proof of concept that this can work when it's taking you around all day in a really complex city and not making any mistakes. And you look at the Cortex cluster that now, as of the end of this week, is going to have 50,000 GPUs. I think we've had this discussion for years, and for years it sounded like it made sense. But then you have the actual software, the fact that we've now taken unsupervised rides, and the conversation doesn't seem to have advanced.
Yeah.
But the software has advanced quite substantially.
Yeah. We actually have a great question on the topic from AW Productions in YouTube live chat. He asks, what changed since Tesla previously said it would be too expensive to upgrade hardware 3 to hardware 4? Did they find some less expensive option, or is this something else? Machine, what do you think about this?
I don't think you want to hear what I really think about it.
I want to hear what you think. You are a cornerstone.
Well,
you speak your mind, you're data oriented, you're a data scientist. We appreciate all the input you bring in, despite the fact that hundreds of people ask me every single day to kick you off the speaker board. Regardless, you are a valuable member. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. I would say, based on conversations I've seen people having about what it would take to go from hardware 3 to hardware 4, is that it's not a simple plug and play, that either the power source is different or the cooling source is different, and that it's more involved. So it'd be a more costly swap, and which is why previously I think Elon said that was not possible. I think personally, there's no way that Tesla is going to, for free, swap millions of hardware 3 cars for hardware 4 cars. So I believe this statement is one in which the CEO is making assumptions that he's basically not going to do it for most people, for one way or the other. Most people aren't going to care to do it, or when it's going to happen, I don't know. But in some ways, it's simply not going to happen for millions of cars.
Thank you. Yoda. Dallas.
Machine, I'll push back on that a little bit. Wouldn't you think it'd be in their best interest financially to upgrade those cars? Because then those vehicles would, be paid customers of FSD. So I feel like in a way it's an upfront, investment to then retrofit the fleet back up to current hardware.
Let's go to Wes and then Machine.
The previous speaker almost said exactly what I was going to say. I think that was Dallas. So I think that's a good point. Is that the value of an FSD car that's unsupervised robotaxi is way more valuable than one that isn't. And the upgrade is a fraction of that value.
Yeah, Dallas is, I mean, it's amazing. Dallas in his very young, new to the Tesla community, but he's been adamant about getting these daily feedbacks after each space, and by far the most improved speaker on the board. And just got a huge compliment from an ex-Tesla employee, SpaceX employee who worked on the topic. So which is amazing. Machine.
Yeah, I think obviously, if you truly believe that all these hardware 3 cars are going to be operational robotaxis, and that people will be willing to, buy FSD or pay so much. I mean, the people who already have it that would be willing to upgrade or get the upgrade probably already have FSD, right? Or subscribing. So it's about that incremental amount that Tesla would get, which would be more than the cost to replace it. I'm not sure about the options of how Tesla's planning to either have their own fleet versus have people run their own fleets there. Musk's made some indication there that people will be able to have their own fleets. I would say from Tesla's perspective, you have to think about the ramp up of robotaxis, whether it's the actual Cybercab or these other Model 3, Model Ys. That takes quite a while to get everything operationally running. It's an engineering problem. You have to have all these things involved to have a robotaxi fleet. So do you think in a few years you're going to ramp up the use of old hardware 3 and hardware 4 cars on the road to where they have a lot of value right away? To me, from an engineering perspective, you have to add in years of lag there. And then I wouldn't price those cars and value them as highly, because Tesla will be ramping up their own Cybercab, the predominant vehicle that they're going to make money on for robotaxis in the next few years. So I think that's still going to be the key model to value Tesla as a robotaxi service. And these other ones, I don't know. They're kind of like nice to have. So maybe I don't have an answer.
Okay, Yoda, then Omar.
Yeah, I think this isn't just any hardware upgrade. This is an upgrade that's equivalent of, producing basically a human-like driver in terms of capability. So, Machine, I don't know if what you estimate the cost to be, but replacing, let's say, the onboard inference computers, the cameras, there's a certain number, 10, 20K. But uh, if you think about it from a customer's perspective, they're paying some sort of a monthly lease. Now, if there's some sort of a trade-in offer, essentially for Tesla to lock in that owner to continue leasing for another, say, 4 years or 2 years, whatever remains, then that car could be taken back by Tesla. Now, the cost of upgrading that car cannot be more than producing a Cybercab. And so obviously they need to come up with a process and a line to do that effectively, efficiently at scale. But the revenue that can then come from that refurbished or upgraded hardware 3 vehicle should exceed the cost of doing all of that.
Thank you, Yoda. Omar.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we point out and don't sort of have incorrect information about this, because I think there's been a lot of confusion. Tesla never said we're not upgrading hardware 3 to hardware 4 because it's too expensive. They aren't doing it because it would be pointless. So, a lot of people saw, okay, well, hardware 4 uses a little bit more power. So, okay, it's not possible. You need new wiring harness or something like that. But if they needed to do an upgrade, they could obviously make a new board. Chips are always getting better, more power efficient, that had the capabilities of hardware 4 and more, but were designed to fit within the profile of hardware 3. Everything on these computers is designed to pop right off. Many of the computers have already been upgraded once. In many cases, the cameras have been popped off and replaced with newer, better cameras. This is something where if they need to upgrade it, they easily can. But what a lot of people don't realize is that up until today, they've been running hardware 3 trained models on the car, even for hardware 4. which is to say that the training set is hardware 3 images, and that for hardware 4 cars, they're actually just downsampling the 5 megapixel input to 1.2 and then inferencing that hardware 3 model. This is set to change with the opening of the new Cortex facility, which we just found out was opening ahead of schedule, and probably relates to some of the comments there. But if you think about it, does it make sense to go and upgrade everyone's hardware 3 computer, clog up the service centers, incur all this cost just so you can get them on a hardware 4 model that ends up running the hardware 3 in emulation mode? No. As they diverge more, maybe it makes sense. But if you think about what the cost of this is, it's actually very tiny. Let's say they needed to upgrade every hardware 3 car. There are only less than 400,000 FSD packages sold in the United States. That's, subscription plus purchase. So some fraction of that has hardware 3. Let's, use the biggest number and say it's 400,000. 400,000 with an upgrade cost of 1,000, that's $400 million or something like that. It is pretty manageable compared to the revenue opportunity if this upgrade really unlocked autonomy.
Thank you, Omar. And we have Robert on the speaker board too. Robert Scoble is a regular speaker on our both Tesla Live and AI Amateurs spaces. Tonight's AI Amateur space will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, where we talk about AI topics that are outside of Tesla so that we can educate ourselves. And that also reflects well in Tesla Live discussions as well. Robert, go ahead.
Good morning. There's another way to solve this problem, because I believe Chuck is right that his turn is not going to be able to be totally solved by hardware 3 cameras, and the computer I assume will get fixed, but the cameras are going to be a problem. When you order a Cybercab or order a Tesla in a transportation as a service world, you have to tell it where the car is going to go. Hey, I need to go to the San Francisco airport. And it can say, oh, we can do that whole route because there's no chuck turns on this route. But if there is a chuck turn on the route, it can say, well, you're not going to get a hardware 3 car. You're going to get a hardware 5 car. Right, with better cameras and better computer. Now, whether the hardware 5 car solves Chuck's turn is something we'll argue about for 2 years. But the fleet can solve this problem without solving it for an individual car.
Thank you, Robert. Let's go to Dallas.
Yeah, I've actually got a question for Chuck. So, Chuck, in 2022, Tesla, actually in June of 2020, issued their patent for the HD radar system. But I know back in 2021 is when they started transitioning their vehicles to all vision. Do you see that as material that they might, in fact, reincorporate an HD radar into their current hardware suite?
Yeah, I believe that HD radar was labeled Phoenix or Phoenix radar, and I think it went into some X's and S's, and we were wondering if it was in the Cybertruck, and I don't think there is an external radar in the Cybertruck. I think there's only an internal for passenger occupancy detection. Elon went on the record, said the only radar that matters is HD radar, which implied that all radar is not bad, at least in his mind, from an engineering perspective. I don't know where this is going to end up. Obviously, cost is a little bit of a question mark here. I'm still questioning, ultrasonic sensors. I miss my ultrasonic sensors so bad because the Vision Park Assist is just not as accurate for me. I get, a lot of false alarms, and I'm having to interpret colors for distances and just doesn't provide the precision I used to like with the ultrasonics. So Tesla is solving engineering in a little bit different way than perhaps SpaceX does with Elon's mantra of keep removing stuff until you have to put some stuff back, because not once have they put something back yet on a Tesla vehicle that I can at least quote off the top of my head. So I also just want to comment on the previous comment. I don't think they're going to end up upgrading computers and cameras on hardware 3, even though I think we're also hearing what we wanted to hear from what Elon said on the earnings call. Just think about how they've been handling FSD. They've been offering incentives for upgrades. In my opinion, they're going to try to make hardware 3 work for so long that the best path to getting you in a new car is going to be by offering you an incentive into the hardware 5 car that's available today for a discount that you can't refuse. I just don't think they're going to spend money on these older cars by the time that they may or may not give up trying.
Thank you, Dallas, for the question and Chuck for the answer. Chuck mentioned that cost is a consideration when adding sensors, and just to understand how important what he said right there is, just look at the stock price reaction in the last 3 days after Tesla outperformed margin expectations very slightly. We're talking, um, you know, just a little bit, like kind of like a less than 1% outperformance of versus expectations. And if you add something like a radar, which costs a few $100s, that your margins right there is gone. So, Tesla stock has increased by how much? Let's see. In the last 5 days, we're looking at a 25% increase. That's, look at the market cap, take 1/4 of that. Portion of that increase is due to the margin outperformance. So we're talking like $100 billion decision when you're adding a sensor into the car. So it's very, very important to take these decisions. I'm sure when Wes a decade ago at Tesla having these discussions, I mean, I can't imagine the extent of these discussions, how many, what people were involved, over how many months of discussions they made this decision. And maybe Wes can give us a bit of a color on that, how seriously Tesla and Elon takes these discussions. Wes?
Yeah, big decisions, because it's a crazy amount of money. And you would have to imagine that over time, compute is going to get better, and the amount of pixels that are needed to discern a dynamic object in the scene or a static object in the scene is going to go down over time. We see how computers just march on and software just gets better. So just assume that over time, any amount of compute given a long enough time frame would allow the car to drive itself. But we're talking about a matter of years. Once FSD is solved, you have to kind of make that assumption first. Then you can see that some amount of compute will be applicable, some amount of pixels will be applicable, and over time it'll just get better. So when we made this decision to go with what we had, the amount of pixels that we had was largely not going to work. But we knew that the software was going to get better over time. We knew that the amount of compute that we had over time, we'd just be more efficient with. We'd find new ways to be more efficient. So just
Exactly.
these are the engineering principles and the trade-offs.
Exactly. Skate where the puck is going to be, not where it is, machine. Go ahead, and then Omar.
Well, if you're skating to where the puck is going to be for robotaxis, then, I think you probably would also want your cars to have ways to clean the cameras, primarily the front-facing camera, which last week Omar tried to claim to me that the windshield wiper would clean it. And I just looked at my car and said, no, the windshield wiper was not going to clean the front of the forward-facing camera on my Model 3. So I'm pretty sure that's the same for Model Ys as well. And this sounds like a very stupid little thing, and it may be, but if you're going to have a car actually be a robotaxi and have a fleet of them, when it rains or something gets caught in a bunch of cars, they can't all just stop in the middle of the road or all park on the side of the road and wait for a Tesla service person to come rub his ass on the cameras to get them clean. This is not scalable.
Always colorful. I don't even know what to say to you anymore. Omar?
Well, the windshield wiper assembly is specifically designed to clean the front camera. They also have heating and stuff like that. It's not obviously the most weatherproof thing in the world. There could be additions that could be made to make it even better. But for a reasonable range of conditions, certainly most conditions here in California, I don't think they'll have any problem giving unsupervised rides. They may need to limit the ODD in inclement weather unless they outfitted it with additional hardware. I don't know. But if we can even just get it working in acceptable conditions, I'll consider that a win. But, it's interesting with, Chuck Cook's left turn. We've seen since the program started 4 years ago, it couldn't make that left turn at all, right? Nor could it make unprotected lefts here in California. We've seen obviously enormous progress in what the performance of the system is in situations like that. And I mean, do we think that progress is just going to stop? I mean, I think probably it will get to a place where it is above human levels of safety, maybe, within a few years. I think that, I don't know, the car just has kind of an uncanny ability to read things. Um, Obviously, you need to see traffic, high speed traffic, but increasingly the cars are actually talking to each other too. So maybe able to hear from another car that's actually coming and, hey, yeah, you've actually got a gap. And that's how it'll actually start to exceed human levels of performance, as well as, just improvements in the model. I think the model will continue to improve. And then, to say, well, hardware 3 will never be able to do it or hardware 4 will never be able to do it. I think if a car approaches Chuck Cook's left and determines it's too difficult, there's too much traffic, I mean, it really wouldn't hurt to just turn right. The person will be on their phone. They won't even notice that you turned right and made a U-turn or made a few right turns to get them to their destination.
Thank you, Omar. Wes.
Sorry, I'm going to need a minute.
Okay. Any other questions for Chuck? Please request to speak. Now is the time. Chuck Cook is in space today. He's answering questions on Smart Summon, Hardware 3 versus Hardware 4 video that he just put out. And AJ, he's here as well, who helped him along with that. Edward, earlier you had your hand up. Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question for Chuck, but first I want to say I watch every video that he makes as well as like Omar's videos, and I think it's important to share and like their videos as well as this space because it helps the community get stronger and learn how to use FSD properly and safely. But anyway, when it comes to Chuck, I see that you have the Model Y hardware 4 and the Cybertruck hardware 4. I have the hardware 3 and the Cybertruck hardware 4, and I've noticed a radical difference between the two. Are yours close to the same with the Cybertruck and the Model Y, or do you see any dangerous differences that I should be aware of?
We talked about this a little bit. I'll just recap. There are definitely differences. The Cybertruck is new, and there's a lot of thought process on how this foundation model is being created, whether or not it's vehicle specific or agnostic, and then being essentially ported to different vehicles. It feels like the Cybertruck is driving with a model that was designed for another car, and there's some translation errors, perhaps radius of turn, braking curves, things like that are different. I don't want to say anything is dangerous. The Cybertruck is obviously a much larger vehicle, and depending on your comfort driving a large vehicle, you need to be careful about your rims and your curbs and your angles. The initial releases had it going into the wrong lane. That seems to have been fixed, but it has run red lights for me. So I'm still kind of like curious why this is happening, and I haven't been able to pinpoint it in my own mind why. So be diligent, drive safely, right? We're all supervisors here, and our supervision safety is honestly got the hands of the program in our hands.
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you, Edward, for that shout out. Dallas and then Uzi.
Yeah, Chuck, I got one last quick question for you. First of all, thanks for joining today. We all really appreciate your insight and your knowledge on the topic of FSD and Summon. I guess my question for you would be on Summon. We talk about this a lot. It's kind of a question we all ask in here. Do you feel like in its current state, it is more of a party trick or an advantageous feature of FSD? And then if so, what would help it become less of a party trick? Like Apple Watch integration, things like that. What would help it become less of a party trick?
It is a party trick if you don't take it seriously. If you're showing off, if you're like, hey, watch this. If you're like, hey, hold my beer. Yes, it's a party trick. Don't do that. You need to be able to see the vehicle because it can clip a corner. It can, act kind of in a non-human like way around other vehicles that might be in a hurry, might be in a rush, or might just be assholes. So you can create dangerous situations in that way. So I would say what would make it not be a party trick is a little bit more training, a little bit more human-like behavior, a little bit more human-like speed. I'm a little concerned that our initial release of Banish or Go Park Yourself is going to do great going to find a parking spot, but then it's going to do this 45-second parking job in the middle of a Costco parking lot, and it's going to create kind of some scenarios like that. So we just got to kind of keep it working and be safe around it until it is as fast or as good as a human. I think it's a little bit of a party trick. Now in the rain, in a low dense environment, I think it's going to be a savior to come get you in the rain. There are definitely some good use cases, but if you're doing it to show off, it's a party trick, and I would shy away from that.
Thank you, Chuck. Crunch.
So, is hardware 3 and 4 supervised good enough for rideshare service? For example, if Tesla and Uber got together to facilitate Tesla owners driving for pay, and would Palo Alto and Arizona Next be a good way to go? Thanks.
Chuck, I saw you agreed with that. Would you like to say a few words,
Yeah,
and then maybe
I,
Omar?
I think supervised, they could do anything today. Matter of fact, they're already doing it in Palo Alto, most likely. They already said they're in California, or, San Francisco Bay Area. I'm guessing are in the Palo Alto area. This ride hail service is serious. We haven't seen any of the software yet, but they showed us some screenshots, a shareholder meeting a while ago. So supervised, sky's the limit. They could do anything they want supervised. And I absolutely think it's a great way to go. Now,
Great. Omar?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Uzi.
Yeah, maybe this is a FUD point to be exercised out of my consciousness, but I was wondering if there's any legal liability if hardware 3 is not unsupervised and hardware 4 can become unsupervised.
Let's start with Machine on that one.
I believe the way the contracts are written, that may be only applicable to people who bought FSD before April 2019, and that where they just basically had said your car will be, a robotaxi or able to be a robotaxi. After that, it was basically supervised full self-driving, in which Tesla's already essentially accomplished. So it's pretty clear it's only for the subset of people who bought before that date. Might be an issue.
Omar.
I mean, in this country, people will sue you for anything. People are already suing them about pretty much anything you can think of. So, yeah, if they weren't able to achieve unsupervised with hardware 3, people probably would sue them. Now, they already said they want to make things right. I think that kind of limits their liability there if they're upgrading people for free. I mean, worst case scenario, someone pays them and sues them and wins, and they have to pay out some kind of settlement or something. But to the extent that they can actually deliver everything that they promised and more, then that limits their liability.
Thank you, Omar. Cybertruck. We have a new speaker called Cybertruck EU coming in from Czech Republic. Go ahead, Cybertruck.
Hi guys. Yeah, I have been in this space some time ago, but my question is about the Europe. I know you are not focused to the Europe, but Tesla already announced that they will be starting full self-driving in Europe sometime next year, a long time Q1, but hopefully next year. And my question is, do you think the same kind of model can be used for the driving in the EU, or you need to use another model, or when the kind of your guess for the unsupervised driving of the FSD in Europe?
Thank you. Great question. And just to say about Europe, Tesla Live, I'm actually considering starting an episode at a time that's convenient for Europeans. But first, before we can scale Tesla Live, we need to get Tesla Live to contribution margin positive Otherwise, we're going to fall into the same issue that Rivian has and go bankrupt. So if you want to accelerate that process, hit that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel through the link at the top of your screens. Once we get to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to start, that's a promise, I'm going to start a Tesla Live that's convenient for Europeans, so that the question that you just asked has been answered many times in this space, but you wouldn't be able to because you're sleeping at the time this space is running. So hit that like button and subscribe. Let's start with Omar. Omar, would you like to answer that question?
What was the question?
Question is, can Tesla use the same FSD model in Europe, or are they
Yes.
going to have to? Yeah, but it's not going to be 100% same, right? It's going to be a little
I
bit
mean,
different. Yeah.
You know, it works in Europe already, right? That's the thing people don't really get. The model's trained on data from all over the world, and we've heard regulators like the Swiss transport official say, hey, I took a ride on FSD in Germany, and we had a zero intervention ride. It handled roundabouts. So even since 12.3.6, it's been running in Europe. The issue is actually just purely regulatory in terms of launching it in Europe. Once they have and really the UNECE standards are kind of incompatible with this. They need system initiated maneuvers. They need, changes to allow for hands-free. But if that's allowed, then they can launch it as soon as I think Q1. And they've been testing and training in for quite some time. So yeah, essentially the same model would work everywhere in the world. They actually made a point of saying once, there's not one line of US specific code in FSD 12.
Thank you, Omar. In YouTube live chat, somebody, Tyrone asks, what about Japan, Australia for Tesla Live? Same deal. We're going to start a Tesla Live episode that's convenient for people in those regions once we get to 10,000 subscribers. So hit like, subscribe, share with your Tesla community groups. Machine, do you agree with what Omar said?
I totally disagree. And the reason is that the cameras will not be able to capture all the nuances in Europe. In the US, Americans are nice, tall, big people. In Europe, they're very small, actually. They're like 4 foot tall. And when they turn sideways, they're only 2 pixels in hardware 3 cameras. So this is going to be really hard for hardware 3 to solve what happens. The other part is in Europe, everyone's drunk all the time, and you're going to have to try to predict when pedestrians are going to fall into the streets. And especially in Czechia, there's cans of Pilsner all over the road, so you have to navigate. And it's just a whole new challenge.
All right. Thank you very much. You have 10 words to make your jokes, your racist jokes. Alexander's here to defend Europe. Alexander?
Yeah, screw you, machine. And also, it was not the Swiss representative, it was actually the Swedish representative.
Yeah, machine doesn't know the difference between Swede and Swedish. All right. Any other questions, comments for Chuck Cook, who has agreed to hop in for the first hour of the space? Chuck, thank you very much for joining us today again. And it's good to have you. And send Chuck some love in the replies, as some people have already been doing. We have one of our skeptical speakers on the board now, Luce. Luce, what's your question for Chuck?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I had a question for Chuck. So, had you a chance to ask one of the Tesla engineers about the camera's positioning? Like you said, they will need one more, maybe, in your opinion. Did you had a chance to ask that?
I ask everyone I get the chance to ask, and they wryly smile and say they can't talk about it. So, and I specifically brought up the question about the Cybertruck having a bumper camera, and I got a little bit better of an answer from one engineer in LA about that one. He said, I really can't talk about it, but it's there, right? Question mark, wry smile. So that implied to me that perhaps the bumper camera did have a future in the FSD inference model. So the engineers, obviously, I don't want to say they fear for their jobs, but they are given very, very strict boundaries about what they can and cannot talk about. They're all very friendly, they're all very polite, and they all definitely want to have conversations, but within the bounds that they're allowed to speak about. Hey, Yaman, I'm going to have to jump off at the end of this hour. Thank you. Appreciate all the nice, hospitable, and supportive questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck, for hopping in, and you're always welcome to come back. All right, let's go to Machine, who had his hand up. Machine?
I just want to verify, didn't the Cybercab also have a front bumper camera?
Yes, it did.
There you go. Good question, quick answer. Wave.
Hey, Yaman, my question was for Chuck. I guess I missed him. Great to hear him on this session. My question for him, if you're interested, it was given his experience with FSD and him being a pilot, if he had to give a prompt to ChatGPT, what would it be to create a script for Tesla to use as an educational video for new users of FSD supervised? Because I think Chuck brings immense insight to not do stupid things and just give a quick intro to people that are starting a new FSD supervised. Thanks.
Good question. Maybe Omar can answer that, but interestingly, I did a test drive the other day, as I mentioned earlier, and Tesla has this new introductory. It was a very new Model Y with just a few miles on it. Tesla has these new videos when you hop in, but I didn't find one about FSD, which I thought was interesting. Omar, would you like to answer Wave's question?
What is Chuck doing to help promote safety, or I'm not sure I understood.
Yeah, Wave, just as a rule of thumb, please keep questions to 10 words or fewer. Otherwise, most people just kind of check out halfway. Wait, would you like
to repeat?
Yeah.
The question was for Chuck or yourself. If you had to do a script for a video, introduction video from Tesla to FSD supervised, what would it be? And
Well, they've actually made a video. It's pretty good, so I recommend people watch that. Maybe they should show it more prominently in the autopilot screen, for example. Right now, they kind of give you a wall of text. I would put the video right there. Should be a pretty easy project for Tesla summer intern. And yeah, it's actually a good video, but we want to make sure people see it. I think it's in the Tesla tutorials, but who's going to know to go there? It does pop up like when you first get the car and when you rent the car, but they're also going to see text. So when they turn on FSD, it'll say, you have to watch. Of course, there's a driver monitoring system. But it is important to stress to people that, hey, this thing could make a mistake that could be horrible, right? I think the phrase Tesla used to use is it could do the worst thing at the worst time or something like that. So, it could turn the wheel a little too much to the left and there's an oncoming semi or something, and you need to be ready to take over. So that's just a pretty important point to stress to people, but they usually figure it out pretty quickly. The problem is that the software is actually getting so good now that it's becoming more dangerous, in the sense that people come in here and say, hey, man, I could take a nap in this thing, right? And it really feels like they could. But if you're new to it, you might not know that there is that moment coming, the sort of shit your pants moment where you have to be ready.
All right. Thanks, Omar. Thanks, Wave. We are just past halfway. We have 180 likes on YouTube. Let's get that count up. It's been an incredible space so far with Chuck Cook and Omar and Machine and AJ and many others on the board, with Dallas running the interview. Dallas just kind of asked Chuck after watching his video and said, would you like to join Tesla Live to have an in-depth discussion? And Chuck said, sure. And we just had a great discussion. So let's support Tesla Live, get it to 1,000 likes per episode so that we can scale it. We can bring more insightful discussions like this. In the next 30 seconds, I'm going to read our audio ads from our sponsors. if you're listening in X, please take a moment to head over to the YouTube channel through the link in the pinned at the top and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Tesla Live is sponsored by Paymore, which, by the way, Paymore is upgrading me to a MacBook Pro so that I don't have to put ice in plastic cups on my laptop during this live stream. When Machine comes to the space, I have to put one more cup of ice because of his heated debates and discussions and telling people to fuck off every now and then. And now I won't have to do that because of the MacBook Pro. So thank you, Paymore, for supporting Tesla Live. And Joa proudly sponsors Tesla Live, your go-to source for premium Tesla accessories. Use promo code TSLA Live at checkout at Joa to receive a special discount on your next purchase. Machine, go ahead.
I'm reading a lot of vitriol from Europeans over my comments, and what's interesting is they're trying to defend them.
I wonder why. If you tell people they're stupid, they're gonna come after you.
I didn't say they're stupid. I said they're drunk, and they
Yeah.
came back and said, "You know what? That's why we need FSD, so we don't drink and drive." And I'm like, "Oh, nice rationalization for being drunks." Okay, we all know you're drunks and you're trying to save lives. I mean, congrats. You could also not binge
Have
drink.
you ever been to Oktoberfest?
I've not been to Oktoberfest. I've been to Swedish Fest, being on a Swedish
No,
subway.
that
at
doesn't
midnight.
count.
I mean, it's egregious.
I haven't been to Oktoberfest too, so maybe we can host a Tesla Live from Oktoberfest one day. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about on autopilot, FSD, maybe V13, robotaxis? Omar, anything on the V13 timeline?
V13 is nowhere to be seen. So that sweating meme that Ashok tweeted last time, that might actually apply. Now, it is possible they could send it out to early access on Halloween or something, but I could also see it slipping into November. So seems like they're working on the 12.5.6 series. We'll know if we hear more, if employees get it out, but they do still have a few days left in the month. It's the 28th, so we'll see what happens.
Do you think, Omar, the fact that V13 didn't come out in September and maybe can slip into November or October, can slip into November and maybe later, do you think that means FSD's rollout in Europe and China is also delayed beyond Q1? Do you think this is kind of like pushing everything in that list further out, or do you think they're kind of working on these things in parallel?
Well, so far, they haven't missed a single item. We're standing here at the end of October. We're like, okay, they're getting pretty close to the due date here, but they haven't missed it yet. And I wouldn't be surprised if they shipped something out. Of course, they did mention on the earnings call that Ashok was going to say something and FSD 13 was coming soon. So I imagine if it does slip into November, it'd probably be like the first 2 weeks of November. I think they are close to shipping it to early access, that is. The question mark is, once we get it, where is it in terms of stability, and how soon can they make it the major version in the fleet? And does it really deliver the 6x improvement they talked about?
Thank you, Omar. Let's go to Brian Gamble.
Hello. Has anyone else experienced surge acceleration while being passed while on FSD?
Can you be more, I never have to do this, but can you be more detailed in your question?
Yeah, I have a 30-kilometer stretch of 2-lane highway between my community and the nearest bigger city. And with the recent updates, the car goes too slow at 85 kilometers an hour in the 100 zone. I frequently get followed by people, and then they go to pass me. And then when the car is passing my car surge accelerates to not let them pass, as if it feels like it's being rear-ended.
Wow, interesting. Omar, what do you think about that?
Trained on real human assholes.
driving BMWs. I'm just kidding. All right, Machine, do you have an alternate explanation for that?
I mean, it just shows it's imitating the passive aggressive Canadians who like to pretend that they're super nice, but in reality, they're very angry inside. They're like that meme of the person who's got the happy mask on, but inside they're all alone sitting in the corner and they're just very angry. Canadians are just like Europeans, really. They have stagnant economies. Their people are very unproductive and they're very, very jealous of the United States. And that's why they're on here on this American-made spaces with American people supporting it. And, you know, they want to buy our stock market. The only thing yet we have to convince them is to start drinking our beer, and then we win.
Okay. All right. Machine has now insulted Europeans, Canadians. I think that's in total about 1.5, maybe 2 billion people. You still have another 6 billion people to go, and you have 40 minutes to do so.
Well, I can do it in 1 minute. Give me 1
Go
minute.
ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So let's see. South Americans, I lived in Brazil, extremely lazy people. I mean, these guys just want to go sit on the beach for 4 hours a day plus. That's all they want to do. And it's kind of nice, but you wonder why their economy is in the tank for 100 years. Let's see.
Okay, hold on. That's good. That's good. For that, I'm going to pimp you out for likes. Once we get to 300 likes, Machine is going to insult Asia. Okay. Alexander.
Yeah, Machine, do you know why they haven't released FSD in Europe? It's because you are 4 times as more likely to die in a traffic accident in the US than you are in Europe. So they don't see any need to release it in Europe yet because they want to save Americans first, not Europeans.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Let's get
Totally
back on
agree
track.
with
Let's
saving
get back.
Americans first.
Let's get back on track. Okay. That's enough. Omar, let's go.
I lost my train of thought.
Okay, there you go, Machine. This is the impact you have. All of a sudden, we had a step change down in discussion
Oh
quality.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, you know, a lot of people have been complaining about the auto speed. It's driving too fast or it's driving too slow. It turns out figuring out how fast to drive is really complicated. So I haven't personally experienced this issue that we're hearing about in my highway driving. But it seems like maybe it is driving too slow, and then when the person is driving faster, the auto speed is using that as a signal and then increasing its speed. Hopefully, the end-to-end highway version can improve this.
Thank you, Omar. All right, we have a question, I think, maybe from Sean Taft. Sean, you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you.
Yeah, could have done better.
Machine?
I couldn't hear him. Sorry, let me come back on.
Okay, no, you're fine. Sean, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, sorry, it might be my signal is kind of in and out. Now he's dropping and reconnecting, so he'll miss
Sean,
it.
just
I'll come
ask
back
your
once he's
question
up.
again. Ask your question again.
I was going to ask Machine what he thought they could have done better on hardware 4, maybe specifically the new Model 3 refresh versus like what they did on Cybertruck.
Machine?
What could have they done better on the hardware 3 refresh for FSD?
No. What could have done Tesla for the Model 3 refresh with hardware 4 that would make you say, okay, this car is robotaxiable?
You know, I generally am somewhat optimistic on hardware 4. I haven't been dissing it. In general, it has, you know, almost 8x to 10x more compute capacity, according to Lord Elon. The camera resolution, I think, is a significant bump up from hardware 3, as Chuck Cook mentioned. I think 5 megapixels, I think that's quite good. I think for most instances, it would be sufficient. You know, I'm still hesitant on the amount of compute is sufficient, because if you want to take advantage of the higher resolution cameras, then that compute isn't that much more necessarily than hardware 3, accounting for the higher resolution input. I do think there are minute things about view space where being able to see to the sides toward the front of the car more is useful. It's hard to say how many times this is needed and if that would be a hindrance to actually getting to the highest level of safety that's needed. We do see the Cybertruck does have the front bumper camera as well as the cyber cab. I don't know what the field of vision is on those, how much it sees laterally, but certainly having something at the front there could be beneficial. I would have liked to seen that on the refresh for the Model 3, as well as more obvious things that may be needed for an actual robotaxi. Like, I mean, I hate bringing up this stupid thing about cleaning the cameras or other things about making sure the car is like fully automated, but you see this with Waymos. I mean, they have them there for a reason. So I imagine actual robotaxis that have to be used day in and day out and operate for 24 hours are going to have some pieces of hardware. These aren't the hardest problems to solve in the world, but pieces of hardware to make sure it actually operates as a robotaxi and doesn't get sidelined.
Great setup for Omar to smack that down. Omar?
Well, you saw that video at the event of the little robot that cleans the car, right? It's also going to wipe down the cameras. So
Hey, Machine,
Waymo,
have you actually watched Tesla's Canton event? You haven't, have you?
Yeah, I watched it. Okay, unless that vehicle,
Yes.
that robot's going with him on the road, it doesn't matter if it cleans it once a day.
Omar?
I mean, so we have Waymo vehicles on the road. These are driverless vehicles. They're running at scale. And they've got a pretty extensive camera housing here, but there's no camera wipers or anything like that on the Waymo. The fact is, the thing has a couple 100 miles of range for the Waymo. So your cameras are usually not going to get that dirty in a couple 100 miles. You can wipe them down every few 100 miles. It's probably going to be fine. There's a lot of them, they're all around the car. Even if one gets a little dirty, they can actually see through this dirt very well, just using optics and software and everything. So for the driverless deployments we've seen, just wiping them down every couple 100 miles has been sufficient. And you don't want to over engineer it and add cost, complexity. Now you've got another thing that breaks. I just want to point out the irony of the situation that every idiot on the street has an opinion about how to build an autonomous sensor suite. And yet nobody has been able to build a car that can drive anywhere in as range of a conditions with the reliability Tesla's demonstrated. With all these geniuses knowing how to build a sensor suite and how to build millions of autonomous cars, you'd think there'd be a lot more self-driving cars, right? And yet nobody's been able to figure out how to do it better than Tesla.
Machine.
I mean, you're just flat out wrong. Wrong in a Trump voice. Imagine me in Trump voice. Wrong. I just looked on Waymo on their blog. They have a whole post for design to deliver, and they have a whole section called sensor cleaning. And in that section, they say things such as, because we are designing a system that travels hundreds of miles a day, we developed a robust automated onboard cleaning system that employs various cleaning tools like custom nozzles, wipers, coatings, and more to keep our sensors clean and the Waymo driver on the road, etc., etc. They are operating true robotaxis, and they have thought about all these little pieces. I agree. These aren't the most complicated things in the world to do. It's not like solving FSD. That's way harder. But you still have to take the time to do these things, or else your car will not operate as a robotaxi. Thank you.
Okay. This is a heated debate, and it really heating up my laptop. And because of Machine, Pay More is having to upgrade me to MacBook Pro. And in appreciation, please take a moment to go up to the top of your screens and follow the Pay More account. You can do so at the top of your screens. They set out a goal to get to 100 followers. I posted a graphic of what they do, how you can benefit and get paid more for your old electronics. And thank you, machine, for creating this need for pay more to upgrade into a MacBook Pro. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla also uses a variety of lenses, coatings, techniques to make autopilot work in the real world. The other day, I had some construction workers in my driveway, sort of busting up the driveway with a jackhammer. My Cybertruck was just completely covered in dust and dirt. And I turned on FSD and it had a zero intervention drive. I think you probably are not realizing how much Waymo is actually leaning on these depots to make the cars continue to be ready for service. And oftentimes, the cars do have to pull over and someone has to just go get them and drive them manually. So, obviously, having nozzles and things like that on the car are helpful. But Tesla has designed their windshield wiper systems to also clean the front cameras. If you look at the windshield wiper, the wiper itself has been designed to, in one part, clean the windshield and also clean the camera.
Elman, when I get a chance, I want to make a comment on the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I will. Hold on 1 second. Let's actually AJ and then AJ, go ahead and then machine.
Yeah, so I want to make a comment on that. So I've been using FSD since 10.8 days. That was late 2021. And I have maybe arguably more than 30,000 miles, close to 40 on FSD alone. I cannot even remember off the top of my head, I was thinking when we was talking, even once there was an issue where my car actually asked me that, hey, your front camera is blocked or is dirty and it needs to be cleared. Not once. So I don't know what others are experiencing, but I personally think that this camera cleaning issue seems to be overblown. Because if that was the case, in 30,000 plus miles, I would have experienced it. There is some issues that happens when it comes to the side repeaters. And then those are there for various reasons, specifically when it's heavy rain. But my front-facing cameras, and I'm talking about over 3 different vehicles, starting with hardware 2.5, which was my 2018. If I'm not wrong, that was 2.5. And then hardware 3, which was 2020, and my current hardware 3, which is 2022 Model 3. Neither one of them has that issue.
And the other thing is like the cameras pop right off. So a lot of the original
Yeah.
cars have already had their cameras upgraded. If they want to
Yeah.
add a better cleaning, they can.
Yeah. But the problem is you jumped in with your great insights when I said machine. So now ChatGPT is going to give that point for the great insight you just shared to machine. Machine?
Speaking of popping off, Omar just can't wait his turn. Very rude person. I appreciate AJ and his insight that the front camera he didn't experience much issue. But if you noticed in AJ's whole diatribe there, he yada yada the whole, oh, but my side camera got messed up sometimes. Oh, okay. Well, as long as it's a side camera, we don't need that. The car will just be able to drive autonomously without side cameras. No, obviously, you need to have almost all the cameras to be able to be 3D, full 360-degree view. I agree. Maybe I overblew the front camera, though. So, I think this issue is solved. Tesla will need to do something for the cameras to clean them. I don't think it's just going to be a pop plug and play like Omar says. They're not going to do that for all these old cars. Now, I would be interested to know for the Cybercab in this hardware 5, if they actually have anything built in for cleaning, or are they just sticking to the same old, same old?
Thank you. Omar?
I can't wait until this is actually our problem, right? That we've actually gotten the model to work so well, even in a perfect sunlit day with the cameras clean, that we can start worrying about what happens if the cameras are a little dirty. So, that I think is a much easier engineering challenge than actually training a model that can be autonomous in the first place to the extent that you're worrying about, cameras. And I'm sure the hardware is going to continue to evolve and be even better. I mean, personally, I imagine like a sexy Optimus bot that comes and washes the car if your camera gets too dirty. but we'll see what Tesla comes up with there.
All right, great. So this space has been discussing today. Actually, Smart Summon, we had Chuck Cook early on. I had a great first hour of the conversation. If you just joined us in Tesla Live, you're welcome to head over to the YouTube channel. Even during the live stream, you can pause, rewind, listen to that part. And Tesla Live recordings, until further notice, until we get to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, Tesla Live recordings are only available on YouTube from now on. Okay. So until we get to 10,000 subscribers, so to accelerate that process, please hit that like button, subscribe. At that point, I'm going to start posting the videos on X as well. Okay. The recordings on X as well. But we first have to get to 10,000 subscribers. It's very critical. Now, we're going to switch gears because we really beat this hardware issue to death here. And we now have with Machine on the board as well, and Omar. Let's focus on the Tesla stock price a little bit. Okay, in the next half hour, if you'd like this space to continue beyond the 2-hour limit, hit that like button. If we get to 600 likes today, we're going to continue beyond 2 hours. Okay, but right now we're at 234, and the link is at the top of our screens. We have Tesla Tracker, who I believe this might be the first or second time he's joining. Tesla Tracker, welcome to the Tesla Live space. And I know you focus on technical analysis of Tesla stock. Just a couple of rules to kind of go over. When you're not speaking, please stay on mute.
You got it.
When you want to speak, please raise your hand so that I can call on you. What I do with my speakers is, for those who kind of subscribe to it, for those who want it, I give them daily feedback on their performance in Tesla Live, and do it through ChatGPT. So ChatGPT knows who's speaking only because I call on their name. Okay, so let's Tesla Tracker. Would you like to first of all let me ask you, to what do you attribute the 25% surge in the last 3 days in the Tesla stock price?
I'd say it's just a culmination of the 3 years of consolidation that we've been in. The Tesla price has been under tremendous selling pressure and, bearish pressure from the whales and the institutions. They've been trying to keep price down all this time, and they're finally like letting it up, and it's finally like escaping. I draw these triangles. It's been this large, trapped in this large triangle consolidation trend where you have a descending resistance line along with an ascending support line, and we finally reached the bottom of that, or the
Okay.
squeezing out the tip of that.
Okay, so Tesla Tracker mentioned. So I used to do technical analysis when I was 15 years old. That's how I started. And then I actually bought a bunch of books, 16, 17, 18. I haven't since focused on it. I switched more to fundamental analysis of companies. But, we have audience who are interested in both. So I know Machine also does some technical analysis, although I don't think he looks into ascending triangles. But Tesla Tracker mentioned ascending triangle. Machine looks at more RSIs and moving averages and supports and resistance. Machine, would you like to add to that? To what do you attribute the 25% increase in the last 3 days? And do you think the stock is overbought at this point?
Well, first of all, in Tesla's history, the main accelerants of stock price is when Tesla beats earnings expectations. That is the number one trigger for stock price appreciation. And it makes sense. And so in this last earnings report, of course, we had a pretty significant earnings beat. And then if you combine that with the fact that the stock just sold off from the Robotaxi event, that I think you had some primed vision for it to rebound. And given that, I think you could even argue temporarily it could go a bit higher than now. I don't think it's specifically overbought in such a short time frame. It's been a week, less than a week. So I could see it going higher. I don't really do full technical analysis like Tesla Trader. Like I said, I just look if things get overbought and oversold. That's not really a clear indicator all the time. So right now, I wouldn't give really a strong opinion. I would say I looked at Tesla Tracker's Twitter link, X link, and I see it looks like a schizophrenic just drew a bunch of triangles on the plot. So I don't know, Tesla Tracker. It looks like too much information. You gotta clean this up.
Well, I don't really set it up as I draw my
Don't
charts.
you don't need to get defensive. He offends every single person. He wants to put you on defensive. Best defense is offense, so just insult him.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I often get my charts compared to that Charlie Day meme where he's explaining
Yeah,
something on
but
the
I can give you
board.
some. I can give you some pro tips. If you want to insult him, you can go after his eye or his mom. Either one are acceptable. Okay, let me ask you this. Where do you see Tesla's stock price in the next 12 months? And that same question for Machine.
Sure, absolutely. So just to be clear, it's not really an ascending triangle that I draw. I just draw these triangles. If anything, it's really a continuation triangle because price was going up in 2022, and then it took a dive down, and then we've been stuck in this triangle. Now we're finally released, and when we finish, we're going to be way higher than when we started, which was at 414.50. So this cycle is going to end somewhere between 600 and $800, probably.
Okay. When you say cycle, are you referring to Elliott waves?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Machine?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do Elliott waves or anything. I've heard the same thing from other people.
Nobody
where I don't
knows
know.
what you do. You just
Well, what I do
is anything
real.
your expertise area?
I tell you, my expertise area is signal processing and machine learning, and so that's where I actually validate the models built, and not just hocus pocus, fiddly foo. And so it's much harder in that case to make things work repeatably. That doesn't mean you need it to work repeatedly to be correct, especially if there's fundamental analysis combined. So I agree with Tesla Tracker. If he's talking about in a year or two that this stock price could get to above all-time high, $500, $600, it's absolutely possible, of course. If you have the earnings to support it and you also have unsupervised FSD, that you can easily get there.
Okay. Let's tie in what you just said with earnings and what Tesla Tracker said with his 12-month, 2-year price target for Tesla stock into Oppenheimer's Colin Rush was on CNBC this morning. And he estimates $5 to $6 earnings per share for 2027, 2028 Machine, and assigns a high teens multiple to get to $100 per share stock price for automotive. He then says energy storage is worth about $20 to $30, and the balance is AI potential. And I had to check my screen as I was watching this interview to make sure that it was not Machine saying these things, because it's almost verbatim what you said. What do you say to that?
I would say CNBC, if you need a real man who actually knows what they're talking about, not these fucking hacks. Oops, sorry.
Yeah. But do you agree with the numbers? $5 to $6 earnings per share for 2027, 2028. He says Tesla is going to deliver. I mean, they're making progress, but it's going to take longer to deliver on these AI potential expectations than market expects. Machine?
Well, I think he's being a little pessimistic on earnings, even from automotive and energy, for that time frame, 2027, 2028, for $5 to $6 a share. I mean, I was trying to hope for that for 2024 at the beginning of this year. Obviously, not happening. I do see next year. I believe by 2026 they'll be doing at least $5 a share. So it may seem like a small difference by bringing up $5 from a year or two earlier, but it really significantly affects the earnings growth, which then affects the forward PE ratio or PE ratio multiple that's acceptable. There's no way Tesla is ever going to get a PE ratio of 10 or in the teens for their automotive and energy in the near term. So I think it's just kind of, that part's kind of ridiculous. I get the overall point that more of the play is on the AI part, and that getting revenues from that may take longer than people are expecting. But I don't think the share price is necessarily going to wait for those earnings to show up fully before at least some of that AI play is priced in. So I think, and partly that person is correct, but partly I think they're being more pessimistic than I would be. And I would say $5 in earnings in 2 years from now, and if you apply a simple PE ratio of 50, that still gets you a share price of $250, which is around where we're at now. But then you have to incorporate any FSD Optimus play and discounting the value of that back. So we'll be above $250 for sure.
Okay. Interesting final words there for sure. Let's go to Tesla Tracker, and then in the final 15 minutes, unless we get to 600 likes, in the final minutes, we're going to talk about Elon Musk's appearance with Omar at the, sorry, I completely misworded that. Elon Musk's appearance at the Trump rally. We're going to discuss that with Omar. Tesla Tracker, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Yaman. So what was I going to say? Basically, I really respect what you guys do. I actually think fundamental analysis is way harder to do than technical analysis because there's so many different stories you guys have to catch up with. Me and my TA buddies, we typically think that technical analysis price leads first and fundamental analysis just tries to catch up, basically. So, the targets that I've got here on my chart are basically, I'm tracking 3 different ways of counting this. And the first way goes right up to $290.13, which we're very close to. If we get to 290.13 and price starts to show a lot of weakness, it may fall back to something. I had the number right here. It may fall back to something like 267, 268, and then continue higher. Or it could get really dark and then go, if it couldn't get higher than 278 and then get stuck there for a while, then it could turn to an ABC all the way down to 237.84. However, if it just goes right past 290.13 and doesn't care about it, then basically we just default to the next higher time frame chart that I've got. That goes to 417.02 before it has resistance that takes it back to 259. And if it just goes past 417 and doesn't care about that, then we're in basically what's I see as a corrective wave up, even though we don't have a higher high previously to correct this way up to. It's kind of it's like the collective unconscious of everyone who's a market participant in Tesla is targeting this higher price. Anyway, it goes to ABC.
Yeah.
It goes to 710.
Okay.
And so basically, it's possible Tesla price to just keep going up to 710 without stopping. It'll look just like a fractal repeat of what we had in the period from 2021 to 2022.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, that's so if you're interested in technical analysis of stocks, you can follow TSLA Tracker, who is a speaker on the board right now, and do it that way. And then maybe we can have you on, once a month or so, whenever you get a chance to give us an update on your analysis of the stock.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Anytime you want.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, Omar, let's switch gears to Elon Musk's appearance at the Donald Trump rally in New York City, Madison Square Garden, an incredible event with a bunch of speakers. I personally didn't get a chance to watch it just yet. I will though. What were your thoughts on it? The headlines are swarming with negativity on the mainstream media, but a couple of clips I've seen online looks pretty good to me. What do you think?
Yeah, they held a huge rally in Madison Square Garden. Trump was there, Elon was there. Pretty incredible showing of support. They filled up the whole stadium, even in a more left-leaning city like New York City. So yeah, it was pretty incredible. Elon delivered some remarks, pretty consistent with other things we've heard from him on X and at the town halls. So not really too much new there. But I think you see the friendliness between them. You see Melania Trump sort of, meeting Elon's son X, and you see that level of closeness and friendliness. If they do win, he's likely going to have a seat at the table, and it could be very beneficial to his companies. So that's a very interesting story that's developing as we head into the election next week on Tuesday, 8 days from today. But there's that side of it. And on the other side, you've got sort of NVIDIA talking about how they've built this largest supercluster, and that really enabling everything we're seeing in AI. Grok launched Vision. Tesla is, training more and more powerful models. And it's crazy that this is all happening concurrently while he's also campaigning and playing Diablo and doing everything else.
It is amazing how much he's doing. All right. We're going to go to FinFlex in a second, but Alexander, any questions, comments on this topic? Uzi, let's go.
You say Uzi?
Yeah, go ahead, Uzi.
Yeah, so I watched the majority of that. I think the majority was noise. I would say that the only material outcome was Elon said he'll try to cut like 2 trillion of the budget. The rest of it was just memes and a lot of excitement.
Okay. Sorry, FinFlex, we're having a bit of a technical issue here. I'm going to send you an invite to speak. That should help. Uzi, did Elon give a detail, more color on where he would cut $2 trillion from the budget?
Not exactly. Some points like throughout the town halls was that it would be like a live stream. He kind of rambles on that there's like 100 or 99 bureaus that can be cut. Not a specific starting point, but more of an a priori, first principles. What do people actually need in the building, or cutting from there?
Okay, thank you, Uzi. I would love to hear more color about that in coming episodes. Maybe we can discuss that, dig into that a little bit more. That's a big number. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, led by Elon Musk, would be incredible to see. Maybe he can cut $2 trillion out of a $6 trillion budget. That would be incredible. All right. Alexander had some notes to share with us on VW. There's some news around that. We're going to dig into that in tomorrow's space because it's kind of running out of time right now. Alexander, would you like to give us a one-sentence preview for tomorrow's space?
Yeah, sure. So Volkswagen announced today that they're gonna shut down 3 factories in Germany. At least they want to do that. So we can talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's just the top headline. But there's another headline that talks about how they're going to cut salaries by 10% and then have a 0% year for 2025, 2026. So they're in deep trouble. And their stock price is about the same as the depths of COVID right now. And in my opinion, it's going to head lower. FinFlexity?
Hi, how are you all doing today?
I'm good. What do you got for us?
So you guys were talking about DOGE, but we actually had some similar commentary from Jamie Dimon today. He was speaking at the American Bankers Association, where he was saying that the banks are currently facing a plethora of US regulations, particularly new ones set by the government. And his statement was particularly that the banks have taken enough shit from the government till now. From now on, we aren't going to sit down. We are going to go to court and we are going to fight. If you're going to call us to a knife fight, you better be ready for us to bring a machete.
Thank you,
Damn.
Omar.
He really said that? That's some pretty strong language.
Paraphrasing here and there, but this was, I think he said the machete part first and then the second part about they don't give shit about it anymore.
We can dig into this a bit more tomorrow. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, the mood in the room has definitely changed. Whereas in 2008, you had this very anti-Wall Street sentiment where people were very in favor of banking regulation. People blamed the banks for the financial crisis. Now the mood has definitely shifted towards a more sort of deregulatory stance, and the banks may have an opportunity to benefit from that.
Thanks, Omar. We have Chris on the board, and when I look at his profile, he says X Anthropica AI. Is it product manager or project manager, Chris?
Yeah, project. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are you going to join us today for AI amateurs at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central?
Absolutely, I would love to. As long as my work doesn't get too flooded, I would love to. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. What do you got for us today?
Well, this is actually my first time in the space. I'm grateful to be up here with Omar. I've been watching his YouTube videos for years. But my question is, I think you guys were talking about that new XAI supercluster, right? Colossus with NVIDIA that Elon was spearheading. I think my question is, 'cause I'm not too sure, since that is for XAI and they are working on Grok, is there any, I just don't see why there wouldn't be any future plans to integrate Optimus with XAI or have XAI as like a subsidiary of Tesla, so that they could actually implement Grok 3 and like the state-of-the-art AI system inside Optimus. I think those teams would be much better if they worked together. But I just didn't know if they were like two separate entities and they're going to work on their own stuff, or if eventually if they plan to implement XAI's AI into Optimus.
Okay, Uzi?
I have a word on AI for amateurs, but I think Elon hit about it in the earnings call, where these, learning language models are somewhat different than the models you'd have for full self-driving. But I understand what you're saying, because you could integrate a learning language model into Optimus for speech, but maybe Scoble or Homars can provide more depth.
Yeah, we can dig into this more tonight at AI Amateurs, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. Omar, would you like to say a few words on that?
No.
Okay. Alexander, did you have your hand up?
No, I did not.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Today, we covered in the first hour in-depth conversation with Smart Summon, with Chuck Cook. If you join us just now, I highly recommend listening to the first hour on YouTube through the link at the top of your screens. We dug into the performance of Smart Summon with Hardware 3 versus Hardware 4 cars. We also talked extensively about the hardware suite in Teslas, camera resolution, inference compute, with Wes also joining us, who used to work at Tesla Autopilot team. Let's go to Finflexity.
Actually, one more thing. It is a rather unrelated topic, but OpenAI came, the CFO of OpenAI, she was on an interview with Bloomberg today, and she said that they make 75% of the revenue from consumers and only 25% from enterprise.
Very interesting. Okay, we're going to talk more about that tonight. All right. Any other questions, comments? We have one more person coming up, and then we're going to end it. F. Osler, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I was driving the other day on FSD in my 2020Y and ended up behind a school bus. So I decided to follow it a little bit just to kind of see what the activity showing on the screen was behind the school bus. And I noticed it doesn't actually identify the school bus as something different. It just in some places it kind of showed it as a truck or a van. In other places it kind of showed it as a car. And I just wondered, is anybody else seeing that a school bus gets identified as a school bus on there more up to date, or is that something, an opportunity for improvement for Tesla?
Omar, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, not everything that the car sees is necessarily going to be reflected in the visualization. So they can obviously tell a school bus apart from a bus, but they're not going to show every detail in the world on the display.
Thank you very much. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave this X space up so that just like you kind of checking your code and check out your code as you leave a restaurant, please head over to the YouTube channel through the link at the top of our screens, and hit that like button on YouTube. Let's make it a habit. When you come into the space, do your code check-in. And actually, people are really appreciating this analogy and letting me know in YouTube live chat that they check their code. I really like that. So thank you very much, everybody. I will chat with you in a few hours in AI Amateurs. Take care.